Hey guys, so I'm here on a Thursday and I finally have decided to do the video that I have been putting off for a very long time. And that is the video relating back to that funk that I was in months ago and continue to go in and out of. Okay. This might be long and all over the place, but I'm going to try my best to keep my thoughts together in what I want to say. So I'm just going to start off with one of the things that really, I guess, is one of my pet peeves of being on YouTube is, the hate comments that we receive from people who are not in the hobby. But most of them I can deal with. Like, I don't care if they say I'm nuts or I'm mentally unstable or I'm sick in the head or whatever. That, I've heard it all before. I know I'm not crazy. That I can just brush off and whatever. I don't care. But the one comment that I often get from people outside of the hobby that really, really irks me is when I will get a comment along the lines of, go have a real baby. Why don't you just have a real baby or adopt a real baby? Or, go and adopt a real baby or whatever. Those comments, I'm sure some of you guys get those too. And I really, for the life of me, cannot understand why someone would think that that is an appropriate comment to make. Because the fact of the matter is that we all collect for different reasons, obviously. And yes, for some people, they have their dolls because they can't have children. But there's lots of collectors out there that do have real live children already. So for these people to make the assumption that all doll collectors don't have children and use the dolls as a substitute for real children, I hate that generalization because, like I said, there's many of us that do have real kids, and yes, there's some that don't. And for the ones that don't, again, I say a comment like that can be very hurtful because you do not know that person's situation or what they are going through or have gone through. You don't know if they have made the decision not to have kids or if they are struggling with infertility issues or whatever the case may be. You do not know their story and you do not know what, like you could be saying this to someone who has lost a baby, who's had a miscarriage, who has been trying to get pregnant for years. And a comment like that can be like a knife in the heart. So just wanted to start off with that. It is a comment that drives me nuts. And for me, it is very hurtful because my situation in regards to having real children is very complicated and it's very different from most people's issues with not being able to have real kids. And so really what it boils down to is this funk that I keep going in and out of has to do with me having real children and the struggles that I am having with that. So before I dive into that though, I kind of wanted to give you guys a little bit of a background on something. So before I got sick, before I was, diagnosed with lupus, and I was super healthy and happy and energetic and everything was good, my vision and my dream for my life was to find an amazing man and get married, and thank God that happened. But I also originally wanted to have 4 children. I was hoping 2 boys and 2 girls, although I knew that, that can't necessarily be planned. But that was my dream, that was my envisionment, and I had hoped to at least have my first child before I turned 30. And I dreamed of living in a house because I had spent my entire life in an apartment building. And as a kid, I loved my apartment building. Don't get me wrong. I loved my home. My mom made it a home. And, I love living there. And, we would go outside and play in the front yard of my building, or we would go to the park. So, it's not like I couldn't go outside, but whenever I would go and stay with my grandmother who lived in a house, it was like a treat for me to go to her house. And I just loved the space, and I just loved being able to just walk right outside and go into the backyard and play, or go out and sit on the front steps after my bath and let my hair dry in the sun. And, I just loved it. And I always dreamed of living in a house one day. So those were some dreams there. And then also, after I had worked in daycare for a while, and when Alex and I got married, another dream of mine was that, once we'd have a house, I actually wanted to use the basement to have my own preschool from the basement. And originally this dream kind of came to me after I got sick, surprisingly. And I don't really know my thought process on that, but I was basically thinking it would be great to be able to work from home, be my own boss. And my thought was to do preschool as in not full day daycare, but like, there's some preschools around here that just do a morning program. And I figured that would be probably good for me, because then I would just work the morning and I would have the rest of the day off. And, I could run the preschool the way I wanted, the way I felt, doing the curriculum that I wanted to do and all that jazz. And I thought it would be so cool to have that and stuff like that. And so like, I have stuff stored away in our storage room and in our garage right now. Bins that have either stuff that I had put away for future children, or stuff that I had stored away for the possibility of the future preschool. There's like supplies in there and stuff. But I just, over the years of having this illness, has really affected my life in terms of my goals and my dreams for my future. For one thing, I did not have children. Obviously, I don't have real children. I am now 34, and I still don't have children. We are still living in this basement apartment and are really no closer to getting a house, even though we've been putting into savings for a few years now to save up and for a down payment on a house. We're still not really that close to getting there. And the other thing is, in regards to this whole preschool situation, I don't really know how I thought that would work for me, because when it boils down to it, if I've set a schedule and I say that this preschool class is Monday through Friday in the mornings, then I have to stick with that. I'm the only teacher. I was gonna do the home, like the whole ruling, if you're gonna do it from home and you're gonna be the only caregiver, is the ratio is 1 to 5 kids. But I was like, first off, I don't know if I can handle that amount of kids, because sometimes I even struggle with just one. Okay, guys, so I think my batteries are pretty much dead. Like, this battery was charged and it literally just died in like the few minutes that I just used it. So I think I'm going to do the rest of this video on my phone, because at least I know that I don't have to do it in like 8 to 9 minute increments and all that stuff. So I apologize, because I know that the audio is kind of crappy, but I'll try to talk clearly and loudly, but I'm going to do the rest of this on my phone just because the batteries are just not reliable right now on my camera. I got to order some new ones. But anyways, as I was saying, with the preschool, I can sometimes barely manage taking care of one child as a nanny. So I don't know how I thought 5 kids would be a great idea, even if it's only for, what was the program like for the morning going to be? I think it was like going to be like a 4-hour morning program or something like that. But yeah, I don't know where, or maybe not even like a 4-hour. I think it was going to be like a 3-hour program or something. I don't know. I can't fully remember, but yeah. So I was like, okay, I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know what my thought was with that. And then on top of that, if I am the only teacher, what happens if I get sick? What happens if I can't work that day? What happens if I'm in the hospital? What happens if I have a doctor's appointment? I mean, I guess my thought with doctor's appointments, though, is that I could probably schedule them in the afternoon. But I mean, really, what happens if I end up in the hospital or I get sick or whatever? I have no one to cover me. I have no one. And what do I do then? These parents have paid up for a month of programming and there's no teacher. I don't know what I would do with that. So to me, it would be a lot to take on. So that is decision number one, or dream number one, that I have had to throw out the window because of lupus. Yeah. uh, And lupus also, I try not to like think back on this too much, but it's times like this that I just like, you can stay positive when you have an illness like this and think positive. And for the most part, I do. But that doesn't mean that you don't have moments where it gets to you and it wears thin on you and you can't help but think about the past. And in that, I think about the life that I used to have when I had energy, when I felt well every day, and all that stuff. And being up on stage and performing, I miss it. And I just, it's annoying because Basically, what I'm getting at is that lupus has forced me to make decisions in my life that I never thought I would have to make, and quite frankly, don't always want to make, but I have to make them because my health is always number one, and I have to do whatever needs to be done for me to stay as healthy as I can for as long as I can, because really, I want to have the best quality of life that I can. And so it's just the unfortunate part of lupus in that I've had to make decisions that I really haven't liked. And I think I just sometimes have a very hard time accepting them. So of course, like the first thing that I still can't accept is the fact that I got sick so soon after Alex and I got married. Like, it was maybe a week after we got back from our honeymoon that my symptoms started, and they progressively got worse. And I feel like I was so cheated out of the newlywed experience. This was supposed to be, the first year of marriage, it was just supposed to be like the happiest time of my life, and it wasn't. I mean, I love Alex to death, and I was so happy to be married to him, and I still am, but that whole first year, it was like, the vow in sickness and in health. Well, it jumped into gear right away, and I don't know. I mean, I was so sick, and I was in so much pain every day, and I couldn't do stuff, and Alex had to help dress me and help get me up and help move me, and I mean, it was not the first year of marriage that I envisioned. So, dream number one ripped away right there, right after we got married. And then, like I said, then I've kind of had to take a step back and realize that this whole preschool thing, running a whole preschool thing, that's just not a viable option. It would have been great because I would have been able to make a lot more money. It would have been way better way better pay than a nanny job, which would have helped us afford a house. But in the long run, I really had to look at it and think about the what ifs. I had to think about my health and how it might affect me and how my health might affect the students and their parents. And it's just not viable. I mean, unless I had, like, I don't even know. I mean, I would need to have basically a supply staff, I guess, but then I'd have to pay them, and I don't know how that would work out, and I don't know if they'd always be available. I mean, I really don't know, and it's just such an unpredictable disease that I just feel like it would be way too big of a commitment to take on, and it might even be really stressful, which would, stress is not good for lupus. Um, so that's dream number two out the window, plus decision number two that I didn't really want to make. But it's not that big of a deal to me. Like, that wasn't like a really big deal. It was just kind of an idea that I had. But it's, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge deal to me. Now, the other thing, this is the big thing right now, is we want to move. And we want to get out of this basement apartment. For one thing, I want more space. Um, I find this is like too small for us. Um, like our two computers take up almost the whole second bedroom, and we're not getting rid of computers. Alex likes to play his games on his, and I'm always on mine doing editing and stuff. So it would just it would be too much of a fight on who's going to get to use the computer if we had one. And I like to be able to have my computer for my videos, and I can keep my files there and everything. And so we need the two computers. We can't go down to one. So there's that. And then, like, it doesn't leave much room in that extra bedroom. And I would love to be able to have a proper way to organize my craft supplies and have an actual proper workspace to craft. And then the other thing is that I really, really miss having natural light. We only get a little bit of natural light from our front door, a little bit from our bathroom window, and then a little bit from the small windows that are in each room. But really, we don't get a ton of natural light, and I really don't like that. That's one of the main reasons that I want to get out of here and get a different place. I'd love to have something with some nice big windows, and I could get some natural light, which would be good for pictures and videos and even for crafting and just in general for my mood, because I think if when you don't get enough natural light, it gets depressing. And then not to mention the neighbors upstairs. They're driving us insane. It's getting bad. The whole laundry situation that I've talked about before. They still don't pick up after their dog. He poops everywhere, and we have to be careful where we walk. There's so much. We're just going crazy. So this brings me to the current situation, is that we want to move. But the thing about the place that we live right now, the good thing about it, is how affordable it is for being in Toronto. We are so lucky. Our rent is under $1,000 a month, and it includes all the utilities. So, considering we are on 1.5 income, it's been manageable. And before I go on any further with that reminds me of another decision that Lupus has forced me to make, and that is to quit working full time and go down to part-time work. I also had to leave working in daycare because that's what I went to school for. I went to school to be an early childhood educator, to work in daycare centers. And the last daycare center that I worked in, I was so sick from the end of the first week until I left 9 months later. The entire time I was there, I had cold after cold after flu after cold. It didn't matter how many times I washed my hands. I caught every single thing that went around that room. And on top of that, the physical aspect, having to lift all these children to change their diapers on a changing table, 10 at a time, taking the kids upstairs, downstairs, outside. Just the physicalness of the job. I would come home and I would crash, and I had no life. I was able to have no life outside of work. My dolls sat untouched for almost the whole 9 months. I could not enjoy my dolls. I could not enjoy crafting. I could not enjoy reborning, I could not enjoy going out and spending time with Alex or going out with friends. I just was stuck, and I was getting sicker and sicker, and I just had to make the decision to leave and become a part-time nanny. And it has been wonderful. My health has improved a lot since becoming a part-time nanny, and trying to make sure that the families I work for only have one kid that I have to be, responsible for. So that, has made a huge difference on my health. But again, it has, lessened our income. Now, thankfully, because of how low our rent is and because of how it includes utilities, we've managed, and we still, after bills, after savings, after all that stuff, we still have money left over to have fun with. And that's how I've been able to still enjoy my hobby and everything. And of course, my YouTube videos bring in a little bit of extra money too, but it's not like enough to equal out to like a whole other income or something, but it's helped. Um, and so like I get really frustrated too when I hear people making comments that, oh, if you spent, like, instead of spending money on the dolls, why don't you spend the money on a real kid? Well, here's the deal, people. The amount of money that we have left over at the end of the month that right now we use for fun because we don't have a child to support. So we use it for our fun hobbies, for going out to dinner, for going out to movies, whatever. Um, Even if we cut all of that out, even if we stopped spending on our hobby and all that stuff, we still would not have enough money to support a child. Like, that's just it. Like, we save up our money for our hobbies. Um, but the amount that we have, like, I don't have enough money at the end of the month to buy like a new doll every month or to even buy new clothes for my dolls every month. I save up over a few months. And so it just frustrates me that people like try to like dictate what you should do with your money. Um, so anyways, like I said, Lupus has forced me to stop working full time. And to be quite honest, at this point in time, I don't even know if I will ever be able to work full time again, because it seems like any time I have tried to go back into working full time hours, even just now, like as a nanny taking care of one child, if I do full time hours, I start to flare up. So I've learned like what my limit is for working in a week. And if I go over that, then I tend to get into trouble. So I just don't know. Like, I may have no choice but to continue working part time like this for the rest of my life. Um, and that sucks because that's going to greatly limit things for us. But it's the reality, and it's just that I have to do that. Like, I have to do that for my health. So, when it comes down to looking for a place to live, Toronto's very expensive, and Alex is very adamant that when we move out of this place, he wants the next place we move into, he wants us to own it, not rent. And I keep trying to get it through his head that we may not be able to afford that. Um, but he is so determined that we're going to own something. And the thing is that if we want a house, which again, Lupus is getting in there and it's pushing the option of a house out for us. not just in the financial sense because I've been forced to work part-time, but also in the sense that, you know, a house requires so much more work to maintain. And sometimes I have trouble maintaining just this little apartment. So that's another thing to consider. Also, the houses here in Toronto, the average price of houses is $1 million. And we just can't do that. So that means if we want to afford a house, we would need to move far out of Toronto, which I do not want to do because all my doctors are here, my family is here, and my friends are here. People that I may need to help me if I get sick. You know what I mean? Um, but Alex is all for moving out of Toronto, especially if we can move closer to his work and his commute is less. But I get very nervous thinking about that because all I've ever known is Toronto. I've lived my whole life here, and everyone I know is here. And so that gets me nervous and stressed. Um, so our other option is to get a condo, which if we went that route, again, that's another way that's another dream out the window. We won't have a house. We will have a condo. But I've slowly been accepting